What can be better than a macro footage of the soldering process? Microscope footage, obviously. So in this video I will show you how I assembled one of the most complex boards I've ever designed for the hardest project I've ever built. I will be using three methods: hand soldering, hot air gun soldering and hot plate soldering. As for why I'm building it and what it's for, we'll get to that a bit later. For now, let's solder some components, starting with the transistor driver board. I'm going to use a special stencil to apply solder paste onto the board. Soldering with a stencil is a bit like making a sandwich. But, you know, a little more delicate. So the recipe is quite simple. You take a PCB, apply solder paste through the stencil so it spreads evenly across the component pads with the right thickness, and then place the components on top, which actually is the most time-consuming part. Opening a million packages and positioning all the components took me
2 hours later.
Then you either use a hot air gun to solder everything section by section, or use a hot plate to do it all at once. Let's start with the hot air. As you can see, solder paste is basically flux with tons of tiny metal balls in it, which definitely don't taste like metal balls. It has a relatively low melting temperature of around 180 to 100 degrees, and it's super satisfying to watch it melt, especially under a microscope. My favorite part is how the components align themselves almost perfectly thanks to surface tension and capillarity. The only problem though was with some integrated circuits. There was definitely too much soldering paste and some snots formed between the legs, short-circuiting the pins. These had to be removed afterward. That's an extra work which is always kind of annoying. Another issue which usually causes a lot of problems when the hot air gun is used is the monkey. Yeah, the monkey that uses that air gun handle. You cannot see it because it is behind the scene, but the monkey forgot to put some aluminum foil on the plastic connector and the connector was damaged. It just melted a little bit because the temperature was quite high. Connector is still usable, but definitely not as pretty, and that highlights a downside of this method. Since the board is heated locally and this one is 4-layered with large copper polygons that dissipate heat well, the air temperature needs to be much higher than the solder melting point just to get the PCB hot enough to melt the solder. Also, with a hot air gun, temperature control isn't very precise and some components may overheat. It's nearly impossible to follow each component's recommended soldering profile from the datasheet. However, the hot air gun soldering has one clear advantage. It doesn't care what size your PCB is. Whether it's big or small, it does the job. With a hot plate, things can get awkward, especially if the plate is small. But I've got a big hot plate. It's not the best one, it is cheap, extremely dumb, and all it can do is heat up to a specified temperature and that's it. It basically cannot do anything else. But what a coincidence! That's just enough to solder some boards, which is an extremely satisfying thing to look at. Unlike the hot air gun usage, here the whole board is heated equally. It doesn't matter that there are 2 or 4 layers of copper, because the amount of heat this plate can deliver is insane. Most important, without overheating components and without destroying plastic connectors. So even the monkey behind the scene cannot ruin it. Anyway, the soldering quality is quite good, with only one problem. Snots between the legs of integrated circuits haven't gone anywhere, which I don't actually know how to fix when stencil is used. I guess I should have used a thinner stencil to disperse less soldering paste. Are there any professionals in here that solder every day? If yes, please write your advice in the comments. Before we go to hand soldering, I want to tell you about another method which can be used to assemble boards. Actually, you can delegate this task to professionals like this video's sponsor, PCBWay, which not only can produce any board you might need, but also assemble them. All you need to do is provide them with Gerber files of your PCB and a list of components. PCBWay will order components from distributors you specified, solder them to your PCB and deliver it to you fully assembled. But in case you want to solder it by yourself, obviously you can order only PCBs which are high quality with lots of parameters to choose from that satisfy any need you might have, even transparent if you might need those. Due to 11th anniversary, PCBWay provides lots of discounts now, so go and check it yourself. Reference link for the PCBWay is in the description. So I'm moving to the most disgusting, dirty, slow but unavoidable method of assembling boards. Hand soldering. I'm using it to assemble the main control board, which serves as the measurement and interface board for the converter. There are actually two reasons I am soldering it by hand. First of all, this is the first iteration of the board, and as you probably know, the first pancake is always a flop. That means there are likely some mistakes in the design, and it's better to find them before soldering all the PWM channels, current and voltage measurement channels with hundreds of components. Second, I want to test the power supply section first, before soldering all other quite expensive integrated circuits. Because if I don't, there is a good chance some magic smoke will escape from the chips and they will stop working. Soldering by hand is definitely not my favorite method. Like I said, it's dirty, it requires more flux which leaves stains. Maybe it's just another monkey problem, but I always end up with a messy board that needs a lot of cleaning afterward. Of course it looks okay once it's cleaned, but still, extra work. When it comes to technique, I usually solder the entire component at once, if possible of course, like with small resistors or capacitors. Sometimes of course it's better to go pad by pad. Either way, it's much harder to position components precisely by hand compared to using a hot plate. For components with more pins, like integrated circuits, I usually solder one pin first to fix the chip in place, then the opposite pin, and then go one by one across the rest, generously adding flux. Without flux, the solder joint won't be good enough. It might end up with spikes, grainy surfaces, or even cold solder joint, but you probably already know that. So in my opinion, it's better to add a bit too much flux than too little. Sometimes, if the chip is small enough, I'll just solder all the pins on one side at once, but I'm not sure it's the best method of doing it. Each board of course has some through-hole components as well, which must be soldered by hand. It can be quite tricky to get it just right, and by right I mean achieving that perfect joint. Shiny, smooth, with a nice concave fillet around the pin. That's basically the goal. My typical mistake is adding too much solder, which is just waste of solder. But still, I find through-hole components soldering oddly satisfying process. I would say it's one of my favorite things to solder by hand. Anyway, there is also a third board, but it's a simple one. A capacitor discharge board with some resistors, a relay and a transistor. I hand soldered that one too, just because it has only a few components. Now finally answering the question, why do I need these boards? So this set of boards is for assembling and controlling a large DC-DC multiport converter, which is my biggest project so far. This board I've been working on is the control board. It measures voltages and currents from all the boards and sends that data to the brain of the system, which is a digital signal processor. It runs the control algorithm and sends PWM signals to the transistor drivers, which are here. There are 9 PWM channels, which means there will be 9 transistor half-bridge modules. The transistors are SiC modules mounted onto this driver board. Then there is a Japanese driver with protection features and other functions that mounts over the board. Oh yeah, the power of this thing has to be around 20 kilowatts. And no, it is not optimized at all, so don't be shocked with its size. It's not a commercial product, it's a research project. The whole idea here is to test the topology and implement a control and modulation strategy and see if it actually works in practice. Regarding the PCBs, as I mentioned earlier, the boards I've been assembling are the first version, but surprisingly, they do work. I've connected the DSP, measured some voltages and currents, sent control signals, and the drivers are receiving them. The transistors are switching and everything seems to be working, at least at first glance. The only question now is, will it still work when I apply real voltages and full power? The answer will come in one of the following videos, so subscribe, like this video to follow this project and many others. Oh yeah, and don't forget to check out previous projects. They are extremely cool. Love you, bye.